we got that vote going out for the bocce ball court, and that's 21,000 at the high end. So where are you gonna, since it's on the ballot that it's gonna be a shared expense through everybody, do we put it into contingency, another 21,000?
Yeah, so the answer is, okay, which leads me to, yeah, the answer, okay, there's a couple, let me try to respond to a bunch of different things here. Okay, because I'll tell you what's not in here, and then Rich Lavassi, I'll answer your question in a minute. So what's not in here is the cost to purchase staff, for example, the
Right.
bocce court, things like that. So again, what to me, the purpose of the budget is, okay, we are asking all the owners that we need X amount of dollars for operating expenses and X amount of dollars to be put into the reserve, into our bank account. And then when we spend that money out of the bank account, to me, normal operating expenses is what we should ask for the maintenance, and any extraordinary expenses are then taken out of the reserve account. So all I've been talking about right now is just normal operating monthly expenses.
All right.
Unique expenses like the bocce court, like paying for the employees, and again, and I'm just throwing this out there. If we want to make a repair to the porte cochere or the parliament room or whatever else, that's a different conversation. All that is going to become out of our reserve fund, which now leads me into the next part
The
of the
reserve,
equation, the reserves.
There's
From
no
currently-
reserve for bocce court.
Well, it would come out. It's not an everyday expense. So the money that we put for every month or every year, we've been putting away $450,000
In the
again
general
in our general account. So payment for the bocce court will come out of the general account. It's not right to increase.
If it passes, yeah.
If it passes, I'm assuming it passes. It's not right. It's not a normal operating expense.
Mhm.
Okay. The same thing as I said, with any other type of costs, like for example, the landscaping that was done, even though it's coded to the income statement, the money really in a sense came out of the reserve fund because it's not a monthly expense. So that's basically what occurred. So at this particular point, the bocce court we're not asking for funding for the bocce court unless it's through the reserves, which is what I want to talk about. And the same thing with the cost of acquiring employees and staff and any other potential larger item, non-recurring costs. Now,
that should come from the reserves.
that should come from the reserves. All this should come from the reserves.
The salaries, the buyout?
No, the buyout will come from the reserves. The reason why the buyout comes from the reserves is because it's what's called an amortized cost over a 3-year period of the life of the contract. We can handle it different ways. We can ask the owners to pay for it all this year, whatever the amount is, and then not fund it next year, or we can pay it out of the reserves, out of our bank account.
But I don't know. I just don't understand why paying salaries come out of our reserves when it's for major items to infrastructure and pools. I mean, salaries.
No, it's not the salaries. It's the cost of purchasing the employees.
That's I still don't think
Different
that's
from
reserve
salary.
item.
It's different from salaries. But listen, Bill, I mean, we can all vote on it the way that we fund it. I mean, it is what it is. Once we find out the cost, we can have that discussion about it from everybody.
Okay, and I think when we have that discussion about the purchase price for the employees, we have to include, and I think that the 3-year amortization is a good idea because we can actually pay that off over the term of the contract to Castle. We don't have to pay that up front.
Good.
And they will do it as an interest-free loan
Right.
during the term of the contract.
Good.
Okay, so let me respond. Rich Lavasio wrote about a historical view. Rich, I only analyzed 2019 and 20. But the 18 budget, I mean, every year the board sends out the budget for the previous years. Before first service, the format totally changed. And I gotta be honest with you, I'm not gonna go back and try to reconfigure what was done, but that information is available. Let me see if I can get you the 2019 and 20, and obviously the 21. Diana, the reserve increased so much for next year. It hasn't, Diana. We're just about to have that conversation right now. It might, but we're going to have that conversation right now. So let me explain about the reserves. Every year we've been putting away $450,000 a year that from the maintenance payments into our general account. We are on an overall basis, we have funded just a little more than 20% of all potential reserves. In order to get certain things done, like for example, the projects that we were talking about, the bocce court, and some of the other items that we can discuss. This is just a number I threw in there, an increase, a nice even number of $125,000. The board, we all have to vote on, the board has to vote on this. This is not, as I said, this is a draft preliminary for discussion purposes only. So, which leads me into what projects is the board talking about for next year and how are we going to fund it?
So Howard, before you go on to that,
Yes.
I think it's important to let people know if they don't know. I'm sure many of the people do know, but by Florida law, there are 5 reserve accounts that we must fund every year.
Yes.
So that includes the roof, air conditioning,
Concrete restoration.
asphalt, right? Concrete restoration. So by law, that has to be funded every year.
Yes.
So, Howard, here's the thing is, like you said, we only fund 20%, and in our reserve study, it says we're underfunded. So bottom line is, you said 125, why don't you just round it to 150 and make it 600,000 going into reserves? So we can build up our reserves, so when we have to do the roof, when we have to do the chillers on the roof, there's a significant amount of money that's in the accounts, so that we take that money and defer it, so we don't have a bigger assessment. And then I think every year, we should be adding $100,000 to the reserve until we get up to $1 million a year.
Well, I would definitely agree with Bill that we need to raise the reserve transfer at this point, and 600,000 sounds good to me as a start to go from 37.5 to on average to 50,000 per fund per month. The goal obviously is, look, if we have to do work, we have to pay for it.
Yeah.
And we know we're going to have to do work, so we know we're going to have to pay for it. So either you want to pay for it as we go along, a little bit at a time, and budget it, or you don't want to do that and you want to get an assessment.
Yeah.
But either way, you're going to pay for it.
So I think
We're all going to pay for it.
I mean, I'm speaking for myself. I'd rather build up the reserve through my assessment, not my assessment, but my maintenance fee, and gradually increase it over time, and not do it in 25,000 increments, because it really doesn't help. And that would, it would decrease the amount of an assessment. Everybody complains about assessments, minimize assessments. We're partial reserve, so we don't have full reserve.
Right.
So if
Howard, the people want to know,
$1 million and we only have 200,000 in that reserve for that project, we gotta assess for $800,000. So the more we have in reserve, the less you'll do the assessment.
Well,
people want to know how this is going to translate into an increase in maintenance.
it depends on the final number. Right now, if this number is correct and whatever,